The room holds 300 men, and every single one of them is performing. That is what Hyun-soo Kwon notices first, even before he notices the flowers, white peonies, which someone ordered because he mentioned once, 6 years ago, that his mother grew them, or the way the catering staff moves around the edges of the room with the careful deference of people who have been told exactly what is expected and cannot afford to fail. The men notice all of this too, and they are noting it, cataloging it, adding it to their understanding of who he is and what pleases him and how to stay on the right side of that information. 300 men in suits, filling the Kwon organization's annual gathering at a waterfront venue in Lower Manhattan. They have come from the 5 boroughs, from New Jersey, from 2 properties in Connecticut the organization has held quietly for 11 years. They are lieutenants and associates and lawyers who ask no questions and accountants who ask fewer. They are men who have built their livelihoods on knowing Hyun-soo Kwon's name and understanding what it means. Not one of them knows him. He moves through the room with the measured ease of someone who has done this many times. 5 years of these gatherings since he took over at 25, after his older brother Jahun died in a parking structure in Queens on a Tuesday in February that Hyun-soo does not allow himself to think about anymore. 5 years of moving through rooms exactly like this one, receiving exactly this caliber of attention, saying the right things to the right people in the right order. Soren appears at his left shoulder, his second in command, loyal in the way that well-trained things are loyal, which is completely and without interiority. Victor Lim wants 10 minutes before the formal dinner. Tell him after. Soren nods and disappears. 2 men across the room catch Hyun-soo's eye and nod with coordinated precision. He nods back and feels nothing. He has felt nothing at these gatherings for 3 years. The first time he assumed exhaustion. The second time, grief still working through him on a longer timeline than expected. By the third time he understood it was neither. It was the specific numbness that comes from being known only as a function. A name. A warning. He stays 90 minutes, 30 less than expected. He shakes the hands he needs to shake, says the words that reassure the people who need reassurance. He does not eat. He takes the stairs instead of the elevator. In the parking garage, he waves off his driver and gets in the car himself, something he hasn't done in years, and drives north without a destination, and ends up in Crown Heights at 1:07 in the morning, outside a diner with a broken O in its sign, because the light is on and he is not ready to go home. He goes inside. The woman behind the counter doesn't look up when he walks in. This is the first thing. The bell above the door announces him, and she is in the middle of writing something on her order pad, and she finishes the sentence before she raises her eyes, because she is in the middle of something and a customer walking in is not an emergency, and she treats it accordingly. Sit anywhere. I'll be with you. He sits at the counter. He doesn't know why. He has a preference for corners, for walls at his back, for positioning that maximizes visibility. This is not calculation anymore. It is simply who he has become. But the counter feels right tonight in a way he doesn't examine. She comes over 2 minutes later, sets a laminated menu in front of him without ceremony. She is around 27, dark-skinned, natural hair pulled back with a pencil still tucked into it. Wearing a diner uniform, she has clearly worn enough times to have stopped noticing it. Her name tag reads Nora. Her expression is the expression of someone who is good at her job and is doing it, and does not require his acknowledgement of that fact. Coffee, please. She pours it and moves away. He orders eggs because it seems strange to sit at a diner counter and order only coffee, and when she brings them she says, "Hot plate," and sets them down and asks if he needs anything else. "I'm fine." "Okay." She refills his coffee without being asked and goes back to whatever she was writing. He eats slowly. The diner is nearly empty. A couple in a booth near the window, an older man at the far end of the counter with a newspaper, the cook audible but invisible through the pass-through. No one looks at Hyun-soo. No one adjusts around him. The room does not reorganize itself to account for his presence. He has not sat in a room like this in 5 years. Around midnight, she comes back to refill his coffee, the third time, and he says, without planning to, "What's good here?" She looks at him. not with the specific quality of attention he usually receives, which always contains some version of calculation. Just looks, the way you look at someone who has asked a reasonable question. Depends what you want. If you want something that'll actually help you sleep, the chamomile's decent. If you're planning on being awake for a while, the coffee's doing what it's doing. Is it that obvious? You've been here 2 hours and eaten maybe a third of those eggs. She picks up a rag, wipes down the section beside him. Whatever it is, it'll still be there in the morning. He doesn't respond. She doesn't wait for him to. He stays until 2 a.m. He leaves a tip that is too large and doesn't explain it. He sits in the car outside for 4 minutes before driving away, trying to remember the last time a conversation made him feel less alone. He cannot remember. He tells himself he is going back because the food is decent and he doesn't feel like going home, and it has nothing to do with the woman who told him his problem would still be there in the morning. He tells himself this in the elevator of his building the following afternoon, and again in the back of a car on the way to a meeting in Soho, and once more while signing documents that move $17 million through 3 holding companies in a way that is legal if you don't look too carefully. By the time he is driving himself north on Flatbush Avenue at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, he has stopped telling himself anything. The O is still broken on the sign. She is behind the counter talking to the cook through the pass-through. Something that makes her laugh, a real laugh, short and sudden, the kind that escapes before you decide to let it. She turns when the bell sounds, sees him, and her expression does the small thing that faces do when they recognize someone they weren't expecting. Back. Apparently. She pours coffee without being asked, sets it in front of the same stool he sat at before. He doesn't know if this is deliberate or if she simply put it where it made sense. He sits. Eggs again, or branching out. What would you recommend? She thinks about this with the seriousness of someone taking the question at face value. The waffles are better than they look. Don't let the menu picture talk you out of it. He orders the waffles. They are better than they look. She works around him the way she worked the first night, efficiently, without hovering, without performing attentiveness. When she checks in, it's because a glass is empty or a plate needs clearing. He watches her manage the room with an ease that comes from not needing to be noticed. He thinks about 300 men who could not stop watching him cross a room. Around midnight, she comes to refill his coffee and he asks without planning to, "How long have you worked here?" "For years." She doesn't embellish, doesn't apologize or qualify. "Do you like it?" She considers. "Some nights." A pause. "Tonight's okay." He nods. She moves to check on the 2 women who replaced the man with the newspaper. He sits with his coffee and the waffles he has finished in the strange, uncomplicated quiet of a room where no one needs anything from him. When he leaves at 1, he says good night. She says it back. He drives home with the window down. He comes back Thursday, then the following Monday, then both nights the week after that. By the 3rd week, there is no pretense. He drives himself, sits at the same stool, orders what she recommends, tips too much without comment, and somewhere between the first cup of coffee and the last, they talk. Not about anything consequential, at first. She asks what he thought of the waffles. He tells her the eggs are better on weekdays, and she says that's because Miguel burns the edges on Saturdays, and he files this away like useful information. He does not know her last name. She does not know his first. The 4th Monday, she is quieter than usual, moving through her shift with the careful efficiency of someone carrying something and not putting it down. He doesn't ask. She'll say it or she won't. She says it around 11:30, refilling his coffee without looking at him. "I got my MCAT score today." He waits. "It was good. Better than I needed." "Then why do you look like that?" She looks at him directly, the way she looks at things she is actually thinking about. "Because now there's no reason I can't do this." And that's more frightening than failing. He understands this more than he can explain. He doesn't try. She goes back to work. He drinks his coffee. 20 minutes later, clearing his plate, she sets her elbows on the counter across from him. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "What's something you actually like?" Simple. Unhurried. Not what you're good at. Not what you do. Something you like. He opens his mouth. Closes it. She waits. The way people wait when they are genuinely interested and are not filling silence out of politeness. The counter hum fills the space between them. The coffee machine cycles. Someone in the booth near the window laughs at something on a phone. He thinks about the question seriously, which is the only way she has ever seemed to want anything answered. Rain, he says finally. When it rains at night, and the city gets quiet. I like that. She nods slowly. Yeah, that's a real answer. What did you expect? Most people say food or a movie. She picks up the coffee pot. Something they can name fast because they've never actually been asked. She tops up his cup and walks away to check the window booth. He sits with the question long after she's moved on from it. When was the last time anyone asked him what he liked? He looks for the memory the entire drive home. It isn't there. He comes back on a Wednesday, not one of his usual nights, and she raises an eyebrow when he walks in but doesn't remark on it. He sits. She pours. He has been thinking since Monday about what it means that he couldn't answer a simple question. A woman behind a diner counter asks him what he likes, and he sits there with his mouth open like someone asked him to prove that light exists. He has made decisions involving hundreds of people and tens of millions of dollars without pausing. He cannot answer what do you like. He thinks about this while she works, while the diner thins toward midnight, while Miguel puts on a radio station that plays something old and instrumental through the pass-through window. She comes to refill his coffee, and he says, before all of this, he stops. Starts differently. I used to draw. Architectural drawings. Not for any reason. I never studied it. I'd find a building I liked and try to figure out how it fit together. I filled notebooks with it. A pause. I was 16, 17. I thought I'd do something with it someday. What happened to the notebooks? They're in a box in storage. I haven't opened it in 8 years. She doesn't say that's sad. She doesn't say you should get back into it. She receives it the way she receives everything, without performing a reaction at him. My grandmother does something similar, she says. Not buildings. Faces. She sits in church and draws everyone she can see from the third pew. Says she's paying attention in her own way. A small pause. She still does it. She's 74. He turns his coffee cup slowly. What was your first memory of wanting to be a doctor? She thinks about this honestly, the way she thinks about everything. I was 9. My grandfather had a bad fall. We were at the hospital for 6 hours, and nobody explained anything to us. My grandmother kept asking the nurses, and they kept being kind in that way that means they're not going to answer you. Her voice is even. I remember thinking that was wrong. That someone should know how to do that. Tell people what's happening to the person they love. I decided it was going to be me. He looks at her. She picks up the coffee pot, realizes his cup is already full, sets it down again. It's embarrassing how clearly I remember it. Like I made a deal with myself in a hospital waiting room at 9 years old and never renegotiated. That's not embarrassing, he says. That's the rarest thing there is. She looks at him, not the assessing look, something quieter, and goes to check on the last table. He walks out into the street at 1 a.m. and takes a full breath of cold air. He hasn't told anyone about those notebooks in 8 years. He thinks, I don't know her last name. He thinks, I need to find out. The photographs arrive Thursday morning, printed and placed in a manila folder on the conference table before Hyun-soo reaches the 22nd floor of the building on Water Street. Victor Lim is 63 and has been in the organization since before Hyun-soo was born. He served under Hyun-soo's father, then under Jaehoon, and now under Hyun-soo. This last arrangement with a patience that has always felt like waiting rather than acceptance. Victor folds his hands with the unhurried ease of a man who has time. We notice some irregular movement over the last few weeks. Driving yourself. No security. Late nights in Crown Heights. Hyun-soo opens the folder. 12 photographs. Him at the counter of the diner. Him in the parking lot. Nora at the window mid-shift, framed by light, visible from the street. The last one taken close enough to see the pencil still tucked into her hair. He closes the folder. Around the table sit 4 senior members, all older than Hyun-soo, all having built their positions under his predecessor and continued them under him through usefulness and the survival instinct of men who know how to make themselves indispensable. None of them speak. They are watching Hyun-soo the way they watch everything. looking for information about where the weight is shifting so they can position themselves beneath it. A waitress, Victor says. The word carries no contempt on its surface. The contempt is structural, embedded in the choice to say waitress rather than her name, her field of study, anything that would make her a person rather than a category. Hyunsu looks at him. The concern is exposure. Driving yourself to a civilian location repeatedly, no security, no documentation, it creates a liability. I'll take it under consideration. The feeling in the room. Victor gestures at the four men whose silence is performing a great deal, is that the association should be evaluated for risk. Hyunsu puts his hand flat on the table. A small gesture, not aggressive. Every man in the room straightens almost imperceptibly, the way bodies respond to a frequency before the mind catches up. I said I'll take it under consideration. He stands, picks up the folder. Anything else? There isn't. In the elevator, he opens the folder again to the photograph of Nora taken through the diner window. The pencil in her hair. The way she is looking at something off-frame with her full attention, like whatever it is deserves it. He thinks about 12 men in that room who track his every movement. He thinks about one woman who asked him what he liked. He takes the folder home. He does not throw it away. He goes to the diner on a Sunday, which he has never done before. She is mid-shift when he walks in, carrying 2 plates to the window table, and she sees him, and her expression does the small recalibration of someone absorbing new information without drama. She delivers the plates, comes back, pours his coffee. I need to tell you something. She reads his face. Whatever she finds there makes her call through to the back. Miguel, I'm taking 10. She comes around the counter and sits on the stool beside him, not across from him, beside him, so they are both facing the same direction. She sets her bag on the floor. She doesn't perform the moment. She picks up the laminated menu she has read 1,000 times, looks at it, puts it down, and turns toward him and waits. He tells her, not performing it, not editing it. The organization, the scope of it, what it controls and how and at what cost. His father building it. Jehun inheriting it. Jehun dying in a parking structure in Queens on a Tuesday in February and leaving a 25-year-old who drew buildings in notebooks to take over something built on blood and silence. 5 years of decisions he cannot take back. What his name means to 300 men in suits, and what it means to the people those suits have damaged. He tells her about the photographs on the conference table, about Victor Lim's face, about the word waitress deployed like a verdict. He tells her because she has given him 11 real conversations in 3 weeks, and he will not let her walk into the next one without knowing what she is walking into. She listens the way she always listens, completely, without performing her reaction. Somewhere in the middle of it, she picks up her coffee mug and holds it in both hands. When he finishes, the diner is quiet. Miguel is doing something with pans in the back. The couple at the window table have their heads together over a phone. I know, she says. He looks at her. I Googled you. Steady. Unhurried. 2.5 weeks in. Your name came up and I sat in my car in the parking lot of my building for 40 minutes reading about you. She turns the mug in her hands. And then I went to work the next day. The silence that follows is the most specific silence he has ever sat inside. It has weight and texture. It is not empty at all. Why? She thinks about it the way she thinks about real questions. Because I was talking to you, she says. Not the thing I read about. You. She sets the mug down. I don't know what to do with the other part yet. But I wasn't going to stop knowing you because of it. He has no response. He has never needed one less. It happens on a Friday. Hyun-soo is in a meeting on Water Street when Soren slides a phone across the table. One line on the screen. Lim moved this morning. You need to see this. He excuses himself. In the hallway, Soren hands him a printed dossier. Nora's name at the top. Below it, her grandmother's address in Savannah, Georgia. Her MCAT scores. The medical school application she submitted 3 weeks ago and the scholarship attached to it, which is funded through a foundation with 2 board members tied to Victor Lim's network. A note at the bottom in Victor's careful handwriting. Exposure works both ways. He reads it twice, puts it in his jacket pocket, goes back into the meeting and finishes it. Because the meeting involves 12 people and 40 minutes, and the work does not stop because a 63-year-old man has decided to find the ceiling of a threat. That afternoon, he makes 4 calls. He is precise and quiet, and the men on the other end understand exactly what is being asked and what it means if it isn't done. Victor Lim's access to 2 of his 3 revenue channels is severed by 6 p.m. His position on the senior council is formally under review, which in the organization's language means it will not survive the review. The 2 board members connected to the Scholarship Foundation receive messages through intermediaries that communicate, without stating anything directly, that their positions are contingent on the foundation continuing to operate as intended. By 8 p.m. the scholarship is safe. He goes to the diner at 9. She is behind the counter when he walks in, and something in his face tells her immediately. He has tried to compose it. She reads straight through the composition. Tell me. He tells her enough. Victor, the dossier, her grandmother's address, the scholarship. He watches her face move through things while he talks, and he cannot protect her from what she is feeling, and he is not going to pretend otherwise. When he finishes, she is very still. Is my grandmother safe? Yes. The scholarship? It's fine. She nods slowly. She is not falling apart. She is doing what she does with hard things, looking directly at them until she understands their shape. Then she looks at him, at what he has just shown her of himself. The reach, the precision, the calls that don't need to be made twice. The version of him she read about on her phone in a parking lot. The version she had decided she could hold alongside the one she knew. I need a few days. Okay. He leaves without asking for more than she's offered. He drives home in the quiet of someone who has shown everything and is waiting to learn what it costs. 3 weeks. She doesn't come to Water Street. She doesn't call. They have never exchanged numbers, he realizes, which means this silence is as loud as a number not being answered. She works her shifts. He knows because Soren confirms the diner is operating normally, which Hyun-soo asked about once and will not ask about again. He does not go to Crown Heights. He told her he would give her what she needed, and he means it, which is new. Most things in his life have a deadline, a leverage point, a mechanism for acceleration. He has built his position on knowing how to move things that aren't moving. Sitting with stillness that isn't his to break is a different discipline, and he is learning it in the way you learn things that cost you. He is not idle in the silence. Victor Lim's formal removal from the council takes 11 days. Done without spectacle. Spectacle implies the person was worth the drama. Victor's positions are redistributed. 2 of his longtime associates, reading the landscape with the accuracy of men who have survived by reading it correctly, realign within the week. The organization absorbs. It continues. Hyun-soo begins a set of conversations he has delayed for 2 years, with attorneys who specialize in asset restructuring, with a compliance consultant outside the organization, with a real estate partner who has been asking for months whether the Kwon portfolio is interested in shifting toward legitimate development in the outer boroughs. He begins these conversations not because he has promised anyone anything. He begins them because somewhere between that waterfront room and a diner counter in Crown Heights, he has understood something about the distance between who he has been and who he is capable of being. He finds the box in storage on a Saturday morning, drives himself to the facility in Sunset Park. The box is in the back, unlabeled. He opens it in the car in the parking lot because the fluorescent light inside felt wrong. The notebooks are exactly where he left them. 8 years of dust on the covers, and inside, the buildings he drew at 16 and 17. A tower on Fifth Avenue broken down to its skeleton, the underside of the Brooklyn Bridge, a staircase in his mother's house that curved in a way he thought was beautiful, and spent a month trying to understand. He sits in that parking lot for an hour with the notebooks in his lap and the window down and thinks about a woman who said, "I was talking to you, not the thing I read about. You." The following Tuesday, his phone shows a message from a number he doesn't have saved. "Are you working tonight?" He reads it 3 times. He types, "No." 3 dots appear and disappear twice. Then, "I'll be there at 8. He doesn't ask where. He already knows. He gets there at 7:30. He sits at the counter and orders coffee and does not look at the door, which takes the specific concentration of a man who has trained himself out of most involuntary reactions and has not trained himself out of this one. Miguel nods at him through the way people nod at someone who belongs somewhere. The couple at the window booth are the same couple he has seen before, or a different couple occupying the same shape. At 8:04 the bell sounds. He keeps his eyes on his coffee for one breath. 2. She sits beside him, not across the counter, beside him, on the adjacent stool, so they are both facing the same direction. She sets her bag on the floor. She picks up the laminated menu she has read 1,000 times, looks at it, puts it down. Miguel comes out without being called, pours her coffee, goes back. She wraps both hands around the mug. Outside, the street moves through the rhythm of a city exhaling after the day's work. My grandmother is fine. I know. I called her every day for 2 weeks. I would have too. She nods, drinks her coffee. He waits, which is the only right thing. I went back and forth, she says finally. About what I saw. What you did. A pause. What it meant that you could do it. He doesn't fill the silence. And I kept coming back to the same thing. She turns the mug in her hands. You didn't do it to keep me. You did it, and stepped back and let me decide. That's not what the thing I read about would have done. He is quiet. So, she looks at him directly. Tell me something true. He thinks about the notebooks in his car. He brought them, for no reason he examined. He thinks about a room of 300 men performing their lives in his direction. He thinks about 8 years of a question he didn't know he had stopped asking himself. I had 300 men who knew my name and were afraid of it, he says. You're the first person in 5 years who knew me. I'd forgotten those were different things. The diner is quiet around them. She holds his gaze with the full, unhurried attention she gives to everything that matters. Then she picks up her coffee. He picks up his. Okay, she says. Not I forgive you. Not let's try. Just okay. The word of someone who has decided, completely, and without reservation. They sit at that counter until Miguel turns the sign. She tells him about her grandmother's garden in Savannah. He goes to his car and gets the notebooks and brings them in and spreads them across the counter, and she looks at every single page the way she looks at everything, with her full attention. Outside, rain begins. The city gets quiet the way it gets quiet when it rains at night. He had forgotten how much he liked that. He doesn't forget again. If Hyunsu and Nora's story stayed with you, the diner, the notebooks, the okay, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Drop a comment. Which moment broke you? When he couldn't answer what he liked? When she said she already knew? Or when she just said okay? And tell me who you want next. Do we follow Victor Lim's daughter, who is about to walk into a world her father warned her about? Or do we go deeper into Soren's story, the man who was loyal to Hyunsu for 5 years and never once knew him either? You decide.